Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 16 breakdown for the Pro Play Games Online Treasure Cup that happened this past weekend. It was 502 players, best of one Swiss, and it was streamed on their Twitch account, which is linked in the description as well as in this webpage that's also linked in the description. And I do also want to say shoutouts to Orange Samurai for putting all of these decks into the online deck builder. I really appreciate it. Saved a lot of time for me making this video and would not have been able to get the webpage and everything else set up without him. So really do appreciate that. Make sure to send some love to Orange Samurai as well. And let's jump on into this breakdown as well. So in this top 16, we see a bunch of red and green. It's a red and green only party over here with 5 of the Zoros, 4 Laws, 4 Newgates, 2 Luffys, and 1 Useless Captain Kid. And it's kind of just an epitome of just like an end game of what this format kind of looks like. Obviously, we've been seeing blue and black trying to get, a little bit of this top 16 coverage, and it's just been very, very difficult for those leaders to do it, and not very consistent when you have all these other leaders just being consistently very strong and honestly very aggressive at the same time as well. I do also kind of want to note that, I've been making this prediction, been saying for the last couple weeks that I think as this format goes longer, less and less people will be finding success with Kinemon and finding more success with the Useless Captain Kid. So technically right on this one too, but I think that's been the trend for the last couple of events I've been covering as well. We'll have to see as well because we do have a bunch of events this weekend too. But if we want to look at the total leader breakdown, we do have 112 Zoros and 87 Newgates, so about a third of what this meta is. 58 copies of Kinemon, and then also 57 copies of Trafalgar Law. So no Kinemon getting into this top 16, even though it did have a good chunk, which is a little bit upsetting there. Trafalgar Law, on the other hand, getting to get the flip side, so not just about as many Kinemon, but it was able to get 4 spots as well. Kind of makes sense as where, a lot of Law players are really devoted to the deck in general, so they're very solid in it, but there's not a lot of people on it in general. Luffy doing, a good conversion as well, 36 people playing it, and was able to get 2 into the top. 30 of the Dofis not getting in there, and like blue, black, and everything else takes pretty much like a third of the meta, and it just wasn't able to kind of get up there, which is kind of upsetting for any of those. And you do also want to mention, so 20 people were playing Kid, and with one of them getting into the top 16, compared to, again, almost 3 times as many Kinemons into this meta, and none of them getting that in as well. So just really interesting kind of numbers and just analysis on that one there. But let's go into our breakdowns of the leaders in general, starting off with our first place list. So this is Justin's first place, Trafalgar Law, and I've been saying this a lot, that Trafalgar Law is probably one of my favorite decks in this format, just from the fact like there's so much room for creativity compared to a lot of the other decks and leaders. It kind of bends to your own play styles and everything else. And I will say, like, this build that we see right here from Justin is starting to look kind of similar to a lot of other builds I've been seeing right now. But Trafalgar Law just has a lot of flexibility in general that it can adapt to the format. And where we didn't see a lot of Trafalgar Law getting tops in the beginning of this format, just the fact that, we've kind of figured out what things are looking for, what you need to counter, and what you need to do. I think we're going to see more and more kind of top as we go on as well. But going into this list specifically, your top end of Trafalgar Law is 4 and 4. I think makes sense in this as well. I really do like this vanilla Zoro. Being able to be a supernova and a straw hat is very strong for you in that one. And then also the other Zoros, the 3 drops, also share that trait, which is really, really nice. And then, just being able to use this to be a 6K as a 3-drop is kind of nice as well. You don't have a counter with it, which kind of can get stuck in your hand, but sometimes you just play it on turn 3 because it's just your cost-efficient thing to do, and it just kind of helps you out for that one. And then you just kind of have your general weenie squad as well. You have 4 events, 2 of them being Jet Pistol and 2 of them being Radical Beam. Radical Beam is definitely kind of like a newer ad, but it can get you out of kind of some tricky spots if your opponent's not really expecting it. And, obviously I think we started the meta with 4 copies of Jet Pistol, maybe even 3, but as time goes on, I think 2 is, going less and less. You just don't really have room for something that sometimes is just most of your turn, especially in the early game when you're trying to set up your board. So it's okay for what it is still. It pairs with Otama still very well, which is really nice. And, it still can be hit in life. And the fact that it is a supernova and straw hat means that Nami and Bonnie can find it, which is really nice. So I think 2 copies is just fine where we're at right there. So anyways, this is Justin's list. Congratulations for their win there. And we're on to the Newgate section of this video. So we have 2 Newgate builds just because they're the Moby Dick and the straw hat version. So this is Paul's 3rd place finish with this one. And I will say a lot of the Moby Dick ones are kind of generally skewing to still like a a Straw Hat low end, which wasn't always the case for it, but being able to just have so many 2Ks is really nice. Nami being able to just, find potentially a Brook or a Sanji or even a Luffy. I think those are all really good adds. Marco's still a really, really good card. And, I think 9-drop Newgate is also just a flex option as well. It's not a card you have to run in these decks. I've seen some, Moby deck list find success without this, which is really interesting. You do obviously want your King Doos and your Atmos, and Jozu especially is just another rush card I think is important for you. Only 2 copies of Vista, which seems a little bit low, but it does seem strong. And then 8 whole option cards, which I would think would be maybe a little bit clunky, but I think it got the job done, so that's really interesting. But this is Paul's list for the Moby Dick version, and then we also have Braden with their 6th place of the Straw Hat variant. And obviously this was, I think, the strongest format, strongest version of the deck when the format was really new, the first couple weeks of it, but it's been kind of understood. I think it's still strong and still can get the job done as well, but it's super linear. I'm pretty sure I've inputted this list 100 times before. Like, this is pretty standard. You just play a lot of Straw Hats. You play a lot of 2Ks. Only 4 Radical Beams, which is a little bit low. I usually like to have a copy or 2 of Guard Point still, but you still were able to top with it, so seems like the good call. And then 4 copies of Edward Newgate. This is definitely the build that wants to drop this as soon as possible, and you get a lot of advantage from it too. So I don't have much more to say. Congratulations to Braden for their finish on that one. 3 more lists to cover today. We do have Niko with their Luffy list, and this is looking really similar to the one that topped the core TCG webcam PPG, or not webcam treasure cup as well. And there's a good reason for it, I suppose. I think this looks like a really strong list in a lot of ways. I think this is compared to Zoro a lot too, just with the fact that you do have like all the manipulation with it, and the fact this is always like a 6K leader at times, which is really important against Newgate, I think is important for some of your matchups and just being able to flex some of the things you're doing. Mass-Deuce is an interesting ad for this deck. I usually run Beppo, but I think like on turn 2, like this is a solid card for you, and getting it to 5K to pressure your opponent's stuff I think is not too difficult. Niko Robin's still a really good card for early game Vista as well, so just having so much removal early game can really set the tempo in your own way, which is great. And then just kind of the other everything else. I really do like King Do in this deck. I really do. I think it's very strong. Just playing it as a 7K, and then you still get to, on curve, you still get to be a 6K leader, or, maybe make your Niko Robin a 5K in attack as well, and then 5K with leader. Like, there's just so much flexibility with it that this gets a lot of value, and kind of hard to get rid of just on its own, which is nice. So good curve, and then Luffy and Zoro, and obviously Newgate as well. Going into events, we're running 5, only 2 Jet Pistols, 1 copies of Red Hawk and Radical Beam. Not a huge fan of Red Hawk right now, because I think it's pretty obvious to play around, but you also do have a lot of flexibility with your Dawn again, that you can be using it. I feel like, if you're trying to play it late game, you always want to play your Newgate, and that just kind of gets stuck in your hand with this being a 2 and this being a 9. So sometimes I don't like running it, but at 1 you're probably fine with that too. So congratulations to Niko for their finish there. We also do have Kelvin with their 5th place Eustace Kid, and I really do like this list. I think there are some interesting choices for it too, but I do like it. I don't really like Cat Viper right now. I don't think it really hits the stuff that you really want it to, and then the fact that it just kind of stays on board is not like my favorite thing. I usually like Yamato as the 4-drop for it. Both of them are Wano countries, and it's just the difference of if you want to have a 4-drop out or a 2-drop that is kind of hard to buff throughout the game. But it could be good, and especially if you don't like the Zoro matchup, Cat Viper is really great there, especially since it will trade into the 1-drops or at least pressure them in that way. Then also like Raizo is pretty understood. I do like 5-drop Yamato too, just the fact that it's a 1K counter in a Wano country, so it's never really dead, and it can sometimes be put in some situations to really pressure your opponent. And then 8-drop Eustace Kid is just super great, really great in this meta. I think a lot of people don't really play around it as much, and some decks do have issues with it. I think like Smoker has a really easy way to remove it, but that's not as meta right now, so you don't have to worry about it as much, which is nice. And then you also are running 4 copies of Punk Gibson, which is quite a lot. That's a lot of Punk Gibsons for this deck, but you just have so many ways to rest things now, and I think that's important. So, I mean, if you're not playing Cat Viper, if you're not playing Yamato, at least Cat Viper and Punk Gibson have some ways to get some rest of some cards. This is only 4 or less, but it still gets the job done. I don't know. I like Yamato. I still like Yamato in a build like this, but I'll I'll be quiet about it. Trafalgar Law does get a lot of value late game, so obviously if you set up your Captain Kidd, and then you can play like a Bonnie, and then use it with to find Law, and then use Law to bounce Bonnie back to protect it, so you can use it again next turn. You just get a lot of value from that too, which is nice, and just keeps the value training going. So, and just the fact like your leader can still just win the game by pressuring late is very good there too. So anyways, that's Kelvin's list. Congratulations for their 5th place. And to round it off, we do have Zoro. And man, what a good guy in this meta right now. Highest placing was 7th place, but Zoro is probably, I don't know, it's a pretty moderately cheap deck to play, and I would say the way to play it is moderately straightforward. There is decision making. I'm not saying that there isn't, but the fact that you get so many 5K swings is very strong, especially in this meta right now. Even getting a good amount of 6K swings isn't too hard with this leader, and you just get so much interaction. The fact that your opponent doesn't really have a good way to clear the board sometimes, and you just get some, like, if my opponent like turn 1 Namis and then like turn 2 uses like Curly to Dan into like another Nami, like I feel like I just lose. Like they just get to build a board without losing any card advantage, and that feels like they're cheating almost. Like it's crazy how good that combo is a lot of the time, just how much early tempo they get with really no negative, right? Also 4 copies of Gordon, which is quite big, which you do get some advantage for. I also like Magra a lot. I think that this needs to be in most decks for this. I'm surprised to see some decks run 0. It's just like another copy of Makino, with also not having to give up like a 2K in hand, and then later you can buff it pretty easy to 5K. So 2 copies of Red Hawk in this build as well, and also Gum Gum and Jet Pistol, 4 copies. So a little bit heavy on the event cards, which is a little interesting to see on something like this. Because these can be kind of clunky in hand, and the only thing is like I'm really surprised how many decks aren't running Sanji, because sometimes you do just run out of cards in hand to pressure your opponent, and that Sanji essentially lets you draw 1, and you're usually not afraid of like losing before your opponent either. So anyways, this is Andy's list. Zoro is going to be good for ever. It's going to be good forever. Mark my words. It's just a really strong leader. So I don't know if they ever need to change anything with this. Maybe if he only buffs Straw Hat characters, maybe that will change the pace of things. But until then, he's going to be really, really good in this card game. Anyways, that's going to be my breakdown. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will be covering more events, especially the ones that are going on right now as of me making these videos that are going on this weekend. So it is a really, really big One Piece weekend, a bunch of events going on, and I'm looking forward just as much as you guys are to see what tops, and I'm going to get that out as soon as I can as well. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.